I'm pulling my driveway. We all know what that means. It's time for the drive to work. Okay, today is the start of a Modern Horizons card-by-card walkthrough, where I'm going to tell lots of stories about the design of Modern Horizon cards, starting with Abominable Treefolk. So Abominable Treefolk costs 2 green, blue. So it's a 4-mana creature, one of which is green, one of which is blue. It's a star snow creature. It's a treefolk. It has trample. Abominable Treefolk's power and toughness are equal to the number of snow permanents you control. And when Abominable Treefolk enters the try that again. When Abominable Treefolk, it's harder than it sounds. When Abominable Treefolk enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So there's a lot packed in here, so let's unpack it. So first off, it is a star creature equal to the number of snow permanents you have. Now it is a snow creature. Now remember, when I talked about Modern Horizons, one of the themes we decided to end up doing was snow. There have been a lot of requests for us to reprint the snow basic lands, and when we were looking for themes that just made sense in the set, snow ended up making some sense. We ended up focusing snow in green and blue. So it was a draft archetype. There was enough stuff in it that was a draft archetype centered in green and blue. One of the things we like to do is we like to make gold cards that are uncommon that help communicate what the set is about. I don't 100% know. My guess is this is the gold uncommon. This is what it looks like. And I know green and blue are the colors for snow. So the nice thing with this card, first off, is because it's a snow permanent, it gives itself a size. It doesn't automatically die. It's automatically a 1/1 because, it counts itself. Now, one of the things this card clearly tells you to do is you're not going to play this card unless you care about snow permanents. The reason this is a good build around is it says, hey, I'm good, but only if you collect as many snow permanents as you can. So what it's saying, if you draft this card early, it's saying, A, draft a lot of snow permanents. B, draft a lot of snow-covered land, because the way snow-covered land works is it's in the packs. You have to draft it. You can't just play whatever amount you want. You have to draft the snow-covered land. And so taking this early really puts you on you care about snow. Draft snow things. And does a good job of sort of communicating that. The other thing it does, which is cute, is it's green and blue. So one of the things you do in a gold card is you want to communicate both colors. So first off, this is a star trampling creature. That's pretty green. That's sort of in green's, green is the color of variable creatures, and it's also the thing that sort of count your permanents and I get bigger. It does that sometimes with land, does it sometimes with creatures. So snow permanents make sense. But you need a blue element to it, and it's a snow creature, right? So it's a snow treefolk. So how do you communicate snow? Well, a clean and easy answer is using an ability that R&D has nicknamed freezing. So the ability when you tap something and it doesn't untap until for a turn, we call that freezing. It's not keyworded, but the nickname in R&D is freezing. So it made a lot of sense to have a snow creature do what we call freezing, which is it locks things down, which is pretty synonymous with, locking things in ice or making things super cold so they can't move. This particular one says target creature an opponent controls, so that, that's interesting. Usually we say that because this is going on Magic Online. In digital, it's just an extra click. And so if there's something that doesn't, like if you really seldom would want to lock down your own creature, we just say opponent controls so it doesn't accidentally do that and doesn't require the extra click. Or it's not an extra click. It helps prevent misclicks. I guess it's not an extra click. It's a misclick issue. Anyway, that is Abominable Treefolk. Okay, next, Alpine Guide. Alpine Guide costs 2 and a red. It's a snow creature, a human scout, 3/3. When Alpine Guide enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a mountain card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Alpine Guide attacks each combat if able, and when Alpine Guide leaves the battlefield, sacrifice a mountain. Okay, so this card started as a card called Trix Goblin, I think it was the original name. And it started not in this set, but in a set that I did. I think Battle for Zendikar. So Trick Jarrett is works on the community side. He does right now. He does a lot of stuff with our YouTube channel and stuff. And Trick has a Kiki Jiki Commander deck that has, or at the time had Valakut in it. And so he had come up with a card he thought was cute. So red does temporary mana. So the original version of this card was, when it enters the battlefield, you search your library for a mountain, put that on the battlefield, and then at end of turn, you sacrifice the mountain. So the idea was that it gave you temporary mana, which is what red does, but the going to get a mountain triggered Valakut, because Valakut cares when a mountain enters the battlefield. So it was kind of this cutesy way to do something red, but in a way that's untraditionally how red does it, and would have some fun interactions, because there's things that care about mountains entering the battlefield. That was the origin for this card, was Trick trying to, he just had a neat idea how to do something a little bit different. For various reasons, the card, it kept getting changed in design. And every time we changed it, we would change the name of the card. So it went from like Trick's Goblin to like Trick's, I don't know, parking ticket. It kept getting more inconsequential, was the joke. And in the end, it didn't end up making it into Battle for Zendikar. I know Trick tried to get it in multiple other sets. I know it was in 2019 for a while. Anyway, this is the set it finally stuck in. It changed a little bit. It's not a goblin. The land stays in now for as long as the creature stays in play, but now it's forced to attack, which it didn't have to do before. So it's gone through some iteration, but it's just interesting how you have a card and just the idea of it sort of morphs over time. And there are definitely cards where it just takes a while for it to see play. I talk about, so with my designer sometimes, that one of the skills of a designer is persistence. That if you have an idea you really like, you just sometimes have to wait for the time and place where it works and does something. The other thing that helped it a little bit here is that they, it was in a set where there were some wilder things going on. There definitely was some interactions. And by making this a snow creature, it also allowed you to have some interaction with snow, because the land you can go and get, it has to be a mountain, can be a snow-covered mountain. And so the card also interacted a little bit with things that care about snow. Okay. Next, Answered Prayers. 1 white for an enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. If Answered Prayers isn't a creature, it becomes a 3/3 angel creature with flying, in addition to its other types until end of turn. Okay, so the idea of this card is, it is a card, white likes creatures. White has a lot of interactions with creatures. And this card was just made to sort of do, for example, we have had many iterations of the creature that gains you a life whenever a creature comes into play. We've done that a bunch of times. We've also done a bunch of cards where white has a non-creature that turns into a creature under certain conditions. One of those conditions can be when a creature enters the battlefield. So this is sort of combining multiple things we've done before, but into a singular card. So the idea is, beyond just getting a life when a creature comes in play, it also turns on. Because of the nature of turning on, it can only happen once per turn. So if it's an angel, it's an angel. It can't, again, become an angel. So the idea is, it triggers stuff every creature, but it only really, the turning itself into a creature only cares once per turn. But the idea is that angels thematically tend to be protective of you, and we often tie life gain to angels, so the whole package is pretty sweet. I think it's a cool sort of white card, combining multiple things that white does, and I think that's kind of one of the fun things that you get to do in Modern Horizons, is mix and match things and put them together. Okay, next, Astral Drift. 2 and a white for enchantment. Whenever you cycle Astral Drift or cycle another card while Astral Drift is on the battlefield, you may exile target creature. If you do, return that card under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Cycling 2 and a white. Cycling means obviously you can pay that mana, discard this card to draw a card. So this is a riff off of Astral Rift. Astral Slide. It's a Lightning Rift is the red version that does bolting. Or does shocking, I guess, technically. So Astral Slide, back in Onslaught block, we had brought back cycling for the first time. Cycling had originally been in Urza Saga block. It actually originally had been in Tempest block, but we didn't print it there. Richard Garfield made it there. And then it got printed for the first time in Urza Saga block. Anyway, Onslaught, we were trying to bring back... I really wanted to bring back cycling. But we had not really repeated a mechanic before. We had done Evergreen. We had upgraded stuff to Evergreen, but we'd never sort of done a mechanic, a keyword mechanic, then brought it back for a block. And I really wanted to do that. I thought cycling made the most sense here. But one of the things that other R&D members wanted was to show that we were expanding in some way. So one of the ideas I came up with is, what if we had some cards that cared about cycling? What if we could make cycling something you could build around? Because that wasn't something cycling did before. Cycling was pretty non-linear before, in the sense that if you wanted to play a cycling deck, play it. There wasn't a lot of cards that interacted with cycling. And I said, well, what if this time we had some cards that interacted with cycling? So I made Lightning Rift and I made Astral Slide. Those are the two cards I made as kind of demonstration of what we could do. Interestingly, Astral Slide, I put a cost on it because it does 2 damage. Not Astral Slide. Lightning Rift, I put a cost on it because it does 2 damage. Astral Slide, I didn't put a cost on it because I thought that flickering, removing a creature every come back, was something that wasn't quite as powerful. So we didn't put a cost on that. Turned out Astral Slide ended up being the more powerful card, partly because there wasn't mana attached to it, and partly because the interactions, the flickering interactions, proved to be quite potent. Anyway, I think the idea for this set was we didn't want to bring back Astral Slide, a little bit too strong, so we made a tweak of it, and then we added in cycling. So the idea that this card, not only does it do it for any cycling creature, but if you cycle this card, it also does that. So that was something we had messed around with back in Onslaught as well, is the idea that when you cycle cards, they could generate other effects. So this was kind of taking 2 different cycling themes from Onslaught and combining them into a singular card. Next, Ayula, Queen Among Bears. 1 and a green for a 2/2 legendary bear. Obviously a creature. Whenever another bear enters the battlefield under your control, choose one. Either put 2+1/+1 counters on target bear, or target bear you control fights target creature you don't control. So this was the brainchild of Ethan Fleischer. So Ethan has a bear commander deck that he's had for quite a while. And one of his regrets is there's not a good commander for his bear. So in Core 2019, he actually ended up making the first legendary bear, Goreclaw. The problem was, the way Goreclaw ended up was, he really was a card that was a commander for large creatures, because he rewarded things with power 4 or greater. The problem is, some bears are 4 or greater, most bears aren't. So while he was a legendary bear, and he had a theme that you could build around, which is larger creatures, he wasn't really a bear lord. And Ethan realized that he had goofed. He had made a legendary bear, but the legendary bear wasn't a bear lord. He wanted a legendary bear to run his bear deck, his command. He needed a bear commander. So one of the themes of this set was there was a lot of tribal components to it. The Changeling theme really helped you put a lot of tribal stuff that wasn't naturally there. Anyway, he saw the opportunity. He knew there was going to be some legends in the set. There's, in fact, a cycle of monocolored legends. And so he made it. He made his Bear Lord. I often talk about how designers sometimes, every once in a while, they make something that's just very for them. That's very much a something that speaks to them as a designer. Like, a lot of times you're making cards for other players, but every once in a while, one of the funs of being a designer is you make a card for yourself. You know, not that you don't think other people might enjoy it, but one of the perks of being a Magic designer, sometimes you just make a card that you really want to exist. My perfect example of that was Doubling Season. I love doubling things. I just thought it'd be really fun to have a card that doubles everything, or lots of things, counters and tokens. And I just made it. Now it went on to be beloved, and obviously other people loved it too. But I mean, I made the card for me, knowing that there'd be some, some people think, obviously I enjoy it, there are other players like me. But you don't get to make a lot of cards just for you. Most of your cards are made for other people. But every once in a while, you get to make a card just for yourself. And this was Ethan doing that. This was Ethan's Doubling Season, if you will. So anyway, for all you Bear fans, there is your Bear Lord. Okay, next. Birthing Boughs. Birthing Boughs. It's an artifact, costs 3. For 4 and a tap, you get to create a 2/2 colorless shapeshifter creature token with Changeling. So one of the things we did in the set, I talked about this during my Modern Horizons podcast, was we used Changeling as a glue to really make the tribal themes of this set work. And so one of the things that means is trying to find a lot of different ways to interact with changelings, one of which was making changelings. And so this was something we often do. We make an artifact that just makes makes a creature of some type. In this case, makes changelings. Changelings are all shapeshifters, so it made sense they're shapeshifters. And this is just kind of, one of the problems some decks have, tribal decks, is you just don't have enough of the tribe. And so yes, we made a lot of changeling individual creatures, but this is a card that said, hey, do you need a lot of, fill in the blank, a lot of goats, a lot of oofs, a lot of brushwags? Pick something where there's not a lot of them and you want to make a bunch of them. This allows you to make a bunch of them because it gets to make a lot of different creatures. Okay, next, Bladeback Sliver. 1 and a red for a 2/2 Sliver, obviously a creature. It's got Hellbent. As long as you have no cards in hand, Sliver creatures you control have tap. This creature deals 1 damage to target creature, player, or planeswalker. So one of the things that we went back and forth on this card is, so one of the things we try to do when making Slivers was looking at all the mechanics, because the set could have whatever mechanics it wanted within the constraints of in Modern Dragons of Tarkir earlier. And so one of the things we looked at was Hellbent, and we liked the idea of, what if we granted Hellbent? And the big question in this card was, well, A, it had to do something at Hellbent, right? Hellbent's a condition. And so the idea that we toyed around with is, okay, what's a clean, simple thing we could do at Hellbent? I think we wanted to make this in red, so the idea of just pinging something, of doing 1 damage to something seemed clean. Now the big question was, we were trying to figure out whether it was all Slivers have Hellbent, tap for 1, or Hellbent, Sliver creatures you control have this. And I'm not sure why we ended up in this version. I think the original version we did was all Slivers have Hellbent, do 1 damage. This is one of those things where I'm sure there was a templating reason to put the Hellbent first, and like, this is a Sliver that's quirky in the sense that this Sliver doesn't always grant its abilities, like it only grants its abilities at Hellbent, but being that its abilities only work at Hellbent, if we said all Slivers get Hellbent, it basically works the same. So I'm trying to figure out why from a templating standpoint. There's a templating reason they did this. Maybe it's so, it might be if you had to write this out, it was harder to write out. It was just, my guess is the reason it's templated this way is just less words. That granting Hellbent to more creatures just cause, here's maybe the problem, is Hellbent is an ability word. Can you grant an ability word and still use the ability word? Maybe that might be the issue, is maybe it's hard to grant ability words. And because this one essentially was the same, whether or not this had the ability word or all had the ability word. Okay, this is my guess. This is my best guess. I don't know. I mean, templating happens during the end part of set design. With the exception of unsets, I'm usually not involved in templating. Templating happens way after I hand off the file. Unsets, because I'm the unrules manager, I actually sit in on untemplating because the rules manager sits in on templating. So as the unrule manager, I sit on templating for uncard. So I do sit on for uncards. That's the only time I do templating. So this is me just sort of making a guess, but that's my logical guess, is that granting ability words might be tricky. So anyway, that is Bladeback Sliver. Okay, next, Cabal Therapist. It's one of our original preview cards. Cabal Therapist costs black for a 1/1 horror. It's a creature. It's got menace. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you may sacrifice a creature. When you do, choose a non-land card name. the target player reveals their hands and discards all cards with that name. Okay, so this is based on a card called Cabal Therapy. So Cabal Therapy, I think costs a single black. It was a sorcery, I believe. And it must have been in Odyssey block because it has flashback. And it said, choose a card. Target player reveals their hand. If they have the chosen card, they must discard it. I think it's non-land. Non-land, because this one says non-land. So I originally had made that card. It was called Go Fish. So the Cabal Therapy originally was B sorcery, name a card, target player reveals their hand, and then discards the card, non-land card, and they discard any copies of the named card if it's in their hand. Then it had flashback, sacrifice a creature. So what had happened was I had originally made the card called Go Fish, which was just the sorcery. Just sorcery B, name a card, they discard a card. They discard a card if it's the named card. All copies. If it's a non-land card, all copies of a non-land card. Anyway, and it just was too weak and we didn't make it. So when Odyssey came around and we had flashback, I'm like, we could do flashback. So since it has a non-mana flashback cost, that tells me it must have been in one of the later sets. So my guess is it was in Torment, my guess. Anyway, it's in Odyssey block. I think it's in Torment because it's a I think all of Odyssey had all the flashback costs were mana, and then the non-mana ones were in Torment and in Judgment. It's a black card, so that tells me it's in Torment, I think. So I made the reversion of Go Fish, but with a sack a creature flashback cost, and then ended up being a really good card. And the reason is, the second time you use it, you know what's in their hand, right? So it allows you to take a shot at getting something in their hand, and sometimes you hit. But then, for sure, the next time, it's a coercion, although non-land coercion. You know that you get the card. So anyway, one of the things we wanted to do in this set is do riffs off famous cards. Cabal Therapy is a famous card. So the idea here is it's a creature that just sits there, but every turn, it allows you to do basically the flashback version, which is you can sack a creature to look at their hand. But, much like Cabal Therapy, after you do it once, you now see their hand, so that makes your future guesses much, much better of hitting something. And so it's sort of like, first time I use it, maybe I hit something, maybe I don't, but now I know it's in their hand, I can watch what they play. Next time I want to use it, my chance of hitting is almost for sure. I mean, I know it's in their hand. I might not know their new cards, but I know it's in their hand from what I saw from last time. And so after the first time, you should be hitting every time because you've seen their hand. Now, maybe at some point they run out of cards or they're able to play all the cards you know, but for a while, provided you can create things to sacrifice. That's the key to building around this card, is having the things to sacrifice. But anyway, it's a fun tweak on what the original card had done, and a lot of the fun cards, I think the joy of Modern Horizons is us doing the riffs on old cards. That's a lot of the fun. Okay, next, Chiller Pillar. 3 and a blue, so 4 mana total, one of which is blue, for a 3/3 snow insect, obviously a creature. So for 4 snow mana, monstrosity 2. So if this creature isn't monstrous, put 2+1/+1 counters on it, and it becomes monstrous. Snow can be paid with 1 mana from a snow permanent. As long as Chiller Pillar is monstrous, it has flying. So the idea is it's a 3/3 creature. When you spend 4 snow, it becomes a 5/5 flyer. So it's also playing around with, we did a giant caterpillar, I think back in Mirage, where it was a ground creature, and then eventually you could sack it to turn it into a flying creature. And so this is playing in that space. But the fun thing is it's crossing the sort of the caterpillar into the butterfly with the snow flavor. Also, the name Chiller Pillar is an awesome name. I don't know who came up with that, but props. So this is a good example as we're trying to find ways to mix trying to find ways to mix snow in. I love the idea of mixing snow in with another mechanic. So here is snow crossing with monstrous, which is kind of fun. So the other thing this does, by the way, is because you need snow mana, that requires you to have permanents that tap for mana that are snow. So the snow-covered lands will do that, and there probably are a few other cards in the set that produce man that are snow. So, okay. Next, moving on. Okay, next is Crashing Footfalls. So Crashing Footfalls has no mana cost. What? It's a sorcery. So it has Suspend 4 for a single green mana. So rather than cast this card from your hand, pay green and exile with 4 time counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter. When the last is removed, cast it without paying its mana cost. And the effect is create 2 4/4 green rhino creature tokens with trample. So Suspend was a mechanic from Time Spiral block. The idea is you're trading time for mana. Normally when you do a Suspend card, you have an option to cast it normally or cast it cheaper for its Suspend cost. Something we did in the original, in Time Spiral block, was we made, not many, but a few cards that you couldn't cast normally. You could only suspend them. So this card, for example, gets you 2 4/4 green rhino creature tokens, but you only can cast it by spending 1 green mana and waiting 4 turns. So obviously, 4/4 for green is really, 2 4/4s for green is really good, but the 4 turns is really the cost, or a big part of the cost. Having played, as of me recording this, Modern Horizons is, this weekend is the pre-release for all you, but we, R&D, played with it already. We had our pre-release last week, and then we have a Tuesday meeting. It's not a meeting. At lunch on Tuesday is our play day, where we play with the current sets, and we were able to play with Modern Horizons on Tuesday. So I work at home on Friday, so I wasn't in the pre-release, the employee pre-release, but I did get to play at the Tuesday play day. And so I had Crashing Footfalls. I drew my opening hand, I played it, and it won me the game. It is quite strong. The other cute thing about this is there's a card called Crash of Rhinos. Crash of Rhinos makes an 8/4 Rhino. So it has 8 power of Rhinos. And that is called Crash of Rhinos because Crash of Rhinos is the collective term for rhinos. So this is referencing that. This also makes 8 power of Rhinos given its 2 tokens rather than 1 singular creature. I think we have made 4/4 Rhinos before, not on Crash of Rhinos, but I think on other cards. So I think it's combining the idea that we've done Rhino tokens as a 4/4 along with referencing Crash of Rhino. So I think it was definitely something that was a combination of that. Okay, next card, Dead of Winter. 2 and a black for a sorcery. All non-snow creatures get -X/-X till end of turn for X the number of snow permanents you control. So this was doing something fun. Like, one of the things we talked about is, while snow was centered in blue and green, we didn't restrict it to blue and green things. We did a bunch of different stuff, different colors, and this card was made. I'm not sure whether the name came first. This is one of those cards that has such a clever name that part of me wonders whether the name was built into the creation of the card. I think it might have been. I don't know for sure that it was. This was not something that... Snow, by the way, happened during set design. It did not happen during vision design. All the snow designs happened during set design. So I don't specifically know how this card got designed. The name is so clever that part of me thinks that it literally might have been built around the name because the name is so clever. The thing I like a lot about it is it's another one of those cards that encourages a build around. And the reason is, one of the ways to make you care about something is to help it. And the other way around it is to not hurt it. So here, this card, it wants you to have snow permanents for 2 reasons. One, because for every permanent you have, your variable gets higher, -X/-X gets higher. The second thing is, the more snow creatures you have, not only are you going to do more damage and wipe the board, but your snow creatures will survive. So if I have a whole bunch of snow creatures and I cast Dead of Winter, not only will it help me destroy all my opponent's creatures, or non-snow creatures, but mine will survive. So it's even more advantageous. So if I have a lot of snow creatures out, and I'm able to wipe the board of snow creatures, and I have a deck dedicated to snow creatures, I have a much better chance of winning that. Now, it's in black. Snow creatures are centered more in blue and green. But anyway, it's a powerful effect. It's the kind of thing you would definitely splash in the snow deck or maybe allow you to play a black-green or black-blue snow deck. One of the things we like to do when designing cards is give you things that let you push in different directions and add different colors in with certain themes. Okay, Deep Forest Hermit, 3 green for a 1/1 elf druid, obviously a creature. So it's 5 mana total, 2 of which is green. It's got Vanishing 3. This creature enters the battlefield with 3 time counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter from it. When the last is removed, sacrifice it. When Deep Forest Hermit enters the battlefield, create 4 1/1 green creature, squirrel creature tokens. Squirrels you control get +1/+1. Okay, first off, there's a lot going on here. One is, this card is referring a card called Deranged Hermit from Urza's Legacy, which was a very famous card. So, Deranged Hermit is a card on the restricted list, but it's fundamentally different, which is one reason we can print this card. Deep Forest Hermit is exactly what I'm saying here. 3GG, 1/1, all the text is the same, except it does not have Vanishing, and in place of Vanishing, it has Echo. So Echo was a mechanic where you must pay the mana cost during your second turn with it, and if not, it goes away. So the idea was, for the original card, for 3 green, you get to make this creature. It makes your squirrels, and it makes them bigger. But if you don't pay 3 green in the second turn, then it goes away. And the reason you want to keep it is, not only is it a 1/1 body, but it boosts all your squirrels, and you've just made 4 squirrels. But if you have other things to do with your mana or whatever, you do get the 4 squirrels. Now, that card, the idea is you get the body, and once you pay this mana the second time, you keep it around. This doesn't require you to pay the extra mana. There's no echo cost, but Vanishing 3 means you only get it for 3 turns. So the idea is I play it. The first turn, I don't remove a Vanishing counter because it only comes up during upkeep, but it also doesn't have haste. So essentially, I get 2 full turns where I can attack with this and attack with the squirrels it makes, and the squirrels are boosted. But anyway, this was a nice nod. The other thing is, this is a squirrel in a brand new squirrel making card in a black bordered set. Something we haven't done in a while. We did do, there's one we made in another supplemental set. But one of the things you can start seeing is the ice cracking a little bit. There were some people in R&D for a long time that did not like squirrels and did not believe the squirrels were supposed to go into normal sets. The good side of this card is I think the squirrel fans have persisted and the squirrel foes have slowly drifted away. So I see positive things for squirrel futures. This card is hinting at possibly a friendlier squirrel future in R&D, so that's a good thing. That's maybe the best thing about this card. So this is a really fun card. It's powerful. I will say the Echo version is stronger than the Vanishing version. Deranged Hermit is a stronger card than Deep Forest Hermit because the ability to keep it around is quite powerful, even that costs extra mana. But it's fun to sort of bring back the card, give it a different keyword, and the keyword function differently. Vanishing 3 and Echo are very different mechanics. So while these cards are similar in some ways, they're very, very different, and that's why we're not, because of the reserve list, we can't make Deranged Hermit. This card, while a nod to Deranged Hermit, is not Deranged Hermit. It is nowhere near the power level of Deranged Hermit, so it is acceptable to make in Modern. Okay, next card is Dregscape Sliver. 1 black for a Sliver, a 2/2 Sliver, which is a creature. Each Sliver creature card in your graveyard has Unearth 2. And then it defines Unearth 2 as, for 2 mana, return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Exile at the beginning of your next end step, or if it would leave the battlefield. Unearth only as a sorcery. So, Unearth first existed in Alara block. There were 5 shards, 1 of each world. So one of the shards was Grixis, which was the black and its allies. So what we had done for that was we divided up into 5 mini teams. I ran one of the mini teams, which was Esper, and I was on one of the mini teams, which was Naya. Interestingly, I was not on the Grixis mini team, yet I came up with the mechanic. In fact, in Alara, this is the one mechanic I came up with, and it was not on any of the teams that I was on. The idea behind this was me trying to create a flashback not flashback. Flashback. Sorry, flashback for creatures. And I think originally I called this Flash Dance because Dance of the Dead was a card that got things back from the graveyard, and Flashback was the thing I was riffing on. So this mechanic was originally called Flash Dance, and I thought it was a funny name. I mean, that was never the real name. That was a design name. Anyway, so the idea of Unearth is it allows us to flashback creatures. The way it does that is it brings them back, and then at end of turn, or if they leave the battlefield, another way, it exiles them. So the idea is I get a creature that has died, but only for a turn, much of the way that flashback lets you use the spell one more time. So we were trying to come up with cool things we could do with slivers. We were just coming up with old mechanics that were legal for Modern Horizons that we thought would be fun with slivers. So this card does something, is because it grants Unearth. Unearth doesn't mean anything unless it's in the graveyard. So I think this is the first card that grants sliver cards in graveyards an ability. So I think that was kind of cool. And Unearth is just neat because it lets you bring back your slivers, and because slivers affect all your other slivers, coming back for a turn can be very meaningful. All of a sudden, right, I upgrade all my slivers by some way to bring something back. So putting Unearth on slivers, it just felt like a neat combination. Granting the ability to things in graveyard felt a little different. So anyway, it just was a neat mix of things that ended up making a really cool card. Next, Echo of Eons. That's also not easy to say. Echo of Eons, 4 blue, so 6 mana total, 2 which is blue. It's a sorcery. Each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library, then draw 7 cards. Flashback, 2 and a blue. Okay, so having some fun here. This is the card Time Twister from Alpha. It's one of the Power 9. Now, given I think it's the weakest of the Power 9, although the Power 9 is pretty powerful, so even being the weakest of that still makes it a pretty strong card. The cutesy thing about this is that its flashback cost is its cost in Alpha. So if the card is in your graveyard, you get to cast the Alpha card, right? So the neat thing about this card is it's a reprint of a very powerful card. Now, given it has to be in your graveyard. But then, for twice the cost, so normally in Alpha it costs 2 and a blue, so here it costs 4 and 2 blue. So for twice the cost, you get to cast it normally. So the interesting thing is 4 blue is about what Time Twister should cost. I mean, maybe, I don't know, 4 blue, 3 blue, but the idea is you get to cast this card. I mean, I guess this is a straight to modern card, so we get to be a little more powerful. But 4 blue lets you do Time Twister, with the caveat that then you get a second Time Twister at the cost of Time Twister. So this is a pretty sexy card. It's a pretty fun card. It really kind of showcases what Modern Horizon can do the best, which is allow us to add stuff to Modern that's fun, that's flavorful, that's nostalgic. This is just a really well-designed card that really, on every level, the fact that you get a flashback for its alpha cost, the fact that its main cost is double, and it just gets do a lot of cool things. The one quirky thing about it is it does not play super nicely with other flashback cards because the Time Twister effect shuffles in your graveyard. Now, given, I mean, you can draw them again, but you have equity with flashback cards in your graveyard because you can cast them again. Putting in your deck takes that away. So it is not super synergistic with other flashback cards, but not every flashback card needs to be played like in a flashback deck. Flashback is a not very linear mechanic, so it definitely allows you to just, I mean, you want to put this in a deck. You're not going to put this in a all flashback dedicated deck. Not that that really is too much of a thing anyway. But anyway, this is a beautifully designed card, so I like it. Okay, next is Endling. So Endling costs 2 black, and it is a 3/3 creature, a zombie shapeshifter. But we'll get to that in a second. And it has a bunch of abilities. So for 1 black, it can gain Menace till end of turn. A second ability is for a black, it can gain Death Touch till end of turn. The third ability for a black, it can gain Undying until end of turn. So Undying is a mechanic that says when this creature dies, if it has no +1/+1 counters on it, return to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it. That's a mechanic from Dark Ascension. And then for 1, Endling gets +1/-1 or -1/+1 until end of turn. Okay, so let's unpack this card. So there was a card in Urza's Saga called Morphling. Morphling was originally supposed to be a clone. Clone had been in alpha. And then because of some rules shenanigans, we couldn't make copy cards for a while. Finally, we got a rules manager that ironed it all out, figured out how to make clone working, and we decided as like a celebration of the mechanic working, we were going to bring clone back and make it a rare in Urza Saga. The art was commissioned, we were all ready to go, and then there was some hiccup with the rules, and the rules manager said, what I think was working isn't quite working, I'm going to need more time, let's not make this clone. So the problem we had was we had a card that looked like a clone. It even had the clone shtick of two creatures in the art that looked just like each other, except one's slightly different. So it was obviously making a reference toward clone. So we knew we needed to do something clone-ish. But we couldn't use clone technology. Couldn't actually copy a creature. So we ended up doing was making a shapeshifter, and we gave it 5 abilities. 3 abilities that were in blue, that required 1 blue, and 2 abilities that required 1 colorless mana. Or 1 generic mana. And the generic mana was +1, -1, and -1, +1. And the idea there was so it could grow and shrink on what it was. And it was a 3/3. So it could be anywhere from a 0/6 up to a 5/1. Or even a 6/0 if you had some way to grant it toughness. And then we made that card. It was called Morphling. It was a huge... I mean, A was very A was powerful, but B was also very popular. And we riffed on that card a couple times. We made an aura and made another creature. And then one day we were making Planar Chaos, which was the alternate reality present set. And we made a red changeling called Torchling in it. And the idea there was we were just doing alternate versions of cards because it was a what-if set. So we made a what-if changeling, except what if it was red instead of blue. And so we kept the 2 generic abilities and then gave it 3 different new red abilities that were in red. 1 or 2 of them overlap because of the messing with color pie stuff. Anyway, we made Torchling, and then that encouraged us to make... what was the green one called? We made the green one next. What was the green one called? Thornling. It's called Thornling. And Thornling, once again, had the 2 +1, -1, and -1, +1, but had 3 unique abilities with green mana. Then in Battle Bond, we made Brightling, which was the white version of it. And once again, the same shtick. And then that sort of said, okay, at some point we needed to make the black version. This was a set all about doing time spiral like goodness. It seemed like the perfect opportunity. It was time to make it in black. Oh, by the way, I think on the green one or on the white one, we at one point condensed the 2 generic abilities to 1 ability solely for space of text. I mean, it's still for a mana granted either of those abilities. Just instead of writing it as 2 abilities, we wrote it as 1 ability where you could choose either version. Anyway, we knew we needed to do black things on 3 of the abilities and then do the +1, -1, -1, +1. I think for fun, instead of just making the shapeshifter, all of them are shapeshifters, we made it a zombie shapeshifter because that seemed fun. So anyway, we wanted to grant, usually we grant an evasion ability, so that, like it was flying on the original Morphling. So here we granted Menace, which allows it just makes it harder for you to block. So that's Black's evasion. We also gave it Death Touch, so that way, another way to give it evasion was just make it something that you don't want to block. The fact that you can change its power and toughness makes Death Touch very powerful, because Death Touch only needs to do 1 damage to kill something. So if I attack and I have some mana available, not only can I make this Death Touch, but odds are I can use the shape-shifting ability to make it big enough that it doesn't die. So that's another reason to make you not want to block it. And then, because this was Modern Horizons, we were able to grant it a keyword, a non-evergreen keyword. Undying seemed fun. That was something where it just was a powerful ability. And Menace and Death Touch are very ordinary. Undying definitely brought it a step up. So anyway, the one other comment on this card was it made people bring up Thornling. So Morphling and all the others except for the green one, there's 2 creatures in the art that are facing each other, kind of mimicking off the original clone. Thornling didn't do that. My joke is that the other one's there is just so big we couldn't fit both in the art. But anyway, the creation of Endling caused a lot of people to talk about that. Anyway, I am at work. Okay, I'm going to quickly finish off E. I have 2 more E's I want to talk about. So Ephemerate is an instant, costs 1 white, so a single white. Exile target creature you control, then return to the battlefield under its owner's control. Rebound. If you cast a spell from your hand, exile it as it resolves. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you may cast this card from exile without paying its mana cost. So Rebound was a mechanic that allowed you basically to cast a spell twice. We like to put on things that are slightly smaller effects, but something that, like, getting 2 copies makes it worthwhile. Flickering things, this is doing instant flickering, which is it goes away, comes right back. This is something that is a minimal effect, so it made a lot of sense. And flickering is something that is particularly good with a wider card pool. It is something where Modern has a little more matters, and Rebound just seemed like a nice mix. At the time we had done Rebound originally, flickering I think wasn't quite a thing yet, we never done this combination before. Anyway, so it was cool to do. This is a neat thing. And finally, Etchings of the Chosen. It's an enchantment for 1 white-black. So it's a gold card. As Etchings of the Chosen enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1. 1, sacrifice a creature of the chosen type. Target creature you control gains indestructible till end of turn. So this, I think, is the uncommon build-around for white-black. White-black's theme is tribal. Changelings are focused in white-black, and there's a lot of individual tribal cards that care about ninjas, or there's slivers are in white, ninjas are in black. There's a cat card. There's a bunch of different cards in white and black. And the idea there is you draft all of these lords, all these things that care about individual creatures, and then have a whole bunch of changelings to allow you to interact with that. And this card lets you sort of choose, so you can pick whatever you want. And so this lets you, basically, it's your changelings plus whatever creature type you have the most of beyond changelings. And so this was meant as the build around. Okay, guys, I'm now at work, and we finished with E. So obviously I will have some more podcasts, because there's some more cards beyond E. But anyway, I hope you guys are enjoying it. This was a really great fun set to design. So hopefully you guys are having fun listening all about it, because it's fun to talk to as well. Anyway, I'm now at work, so we all know what that means. It means instead of talking about magic, it's time for me to be making magic. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.